Welcome back. Last time we were talking about prayer and we were looking at Psalm 139 because the Psalms are a book that is really a collection of prayers. Just talking to God, people pouring out real questions, real thoughts, real emotions. And as we looked in Psalm 139, we found a guy who had learned how God knew his entire life, loved him anyway, wanted to help us understand what goes on in our own hearts, our own anxieties, and lead us in a way everlasting. So I want to share a few more verses from that psalm with you today, from his words and from his prayer. So listen to this. If we back up a little bit, because what we looked at last time was at the end, but in the middle, he says this to God: "Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend into heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, you are there." It's very dramatic. "If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me." See, essentially what he's saying is, no matter where he goes, no matter how high or how low or how far, he knows that God is there and God will lead him. Now, to understand why this is so significant, you really need to know a little bit more about the person that wrote this prayer, that wrote these words. It was a man named David. And David is one of the most famous kings in the history of the planet. But what a lot of people may not know is that not only was he a king, an organizational and political leader for God's people, but he was also a musician. And he became something of a music leader for God's people as well. In fact, many of the Psalms, including most of the ones we'll look at in the next few weeks, were written by David. And all of them were set to music so that people could sing them as well to help them remember these ways to pray. But David was not a person who always saw success. Although he definitely had times where he was the conquering king, he also knew what it felt like to feel like God had gone away from him, or to realize that he had run away from God. In fact, there were many times in David's life where he was literally running for his life from his enemies, where there were things that were threatening to change the course of his existence, even kill him. And yet he learned how to trust God. He learned that no matter where he was, no matter what happened to him, he could have confidence in a God who knew what lies in the path ahead and was always ready to guide him on that pathway. And that's why he could write words like this, that he could say, "Anywhere, even there, your hand shall lead me." That's a confidence that I want to have in God. Not just to read it as somebody else's prayer, but to start to begin to understand that for myself. And that's really why we're kind of journeying on this pathway to prayer together. It's why we put together this guide that can help you, because within each psalm, as we go through it in a week, we've sort of divided that up into a few different sections. Explore, which is kind of what we looked at last time. Questions that help us just start to get a grasp on some of what this psalm is all about. Dig deeper, which is what we're doing today, trying to figure out exactly what does that mean for me. And then try it, which we'll do next time, which is really your chance to practice for yourself some of the things that we've been talking about and learning. And so I want us to dig a little bit deeper today. As you hear these words of David, think of them not as though they were written by David, but as if you might say them yourself. And ask yourself this question: are there areas where I want to ask God that his hand would lead me? We just came through the Easter season, and one of the things that Jesus himself prayed as he went to the cross to pay the penalty for every mistake that we've made, past, present, and future, he actually spoke to God himself and said, "Not my will, but yours be done." David certainly knew how to pray that way. For me, that's really hard. I'm usually praying, "God, I know you know best, but my will be done, please. I think I know what I would like to happen next." So ask yourself that. Are there ways that it's difficult for you to pray, or places that it would be hard to say, "God, your will be done," instead of "my way, please, God"? Maybe it has to do with things that are going on in the world right now. And maybe there's something else that's going on with you that nobody else really knows, and it's unrelated to what the world is thinking about. But would you consider lifting that up to God, just talking to Him about it? Because really, that's what prayer is. So why don't you think about that? Maybe try it in the next couple of days, and we'll meet back here on the Pathway to Prayer.